This is Conversation Balloons, a podcast of interviews with experts and friends about all things generational. I'm your host, Leah Farish. Today, I'm so happy to introduce to you Allyson Schrier. She's co-founder and president of ZinniaTV. She's also president of Thriving with Dementia, which helps businesses recognize and communicate with clients with dementia and teach family and care partners skills to support those people. She also worked for years as program manager for Dementia Echo at University of Washington Memory and Brain Wellness Center and now consults for them. They help health practitioners around Washington State with best practices to diagnose and help people living with dementia. Before that, she was executive assistant to the CVP at Microsoft Fuse Lab, and her MFA is from Vermont College for Fine Arts, in which she focused on writing. And before that was at University of Connecticut for BS in Finance. She's a certified dementia and mental health certified instructor, and she was named Visionary Caregiver of 2020 by caregiver.com. We're welcoming you again, Allyson. Thank you so much, Allyson Schrier, for being with us again, and we are wanting to talk with you specifically about your program, ZinniaTV. And we heard last time about some of what propelled you into this work, but go ahead and describe what ZinniaTV is.
Sure. ZinniaTV is an app for mobile devices and connected TVs that delivers a large library of short, gently paced videos that have been specifically curated, research-driven and curated to be digestible by and engaging for people who are living with dementia. That said, it's really a tool for caregivers because I know that if I play these videos, that the person who I'm living with has a much greater likelihood than, say, watching YouTube or TV, much greater likelihood to be engaged and connected. And even if a person has gone nonverbal, it gives us something to talk about. There are many, many different topics. We also, the videos are also used to reduce and soothe agitation. So they are a great distraction for somebody who is starting to get kind of amped up to help them come back down. And the videos are used additionally to help with adherence to activities of daily living. So videos that when watched will model the activity that I'm hoping that the person with dementia will engage in, whether it's using the toilet or taking a shower or drinking water, eating food, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I remember in one interview you mentioned someone had said, my loved one sees a video of people going out of their room to go to breakfast and realizes, oh, it's time for me to go out and go sit and we'll be having breakfast.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
you.
Yeah. And in long-term care settings, they have found that if they have like the breakfast video, for instance, playing in the waiting area before people go in to eat, that they eat more, because it starts they're watching all this beautiful breakfast food being cooked. And so it kind of gets them ready to eat. And also there's less confusion and agitation when they enter the dining hall because they know why they're there.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too.
Talk a little bit more about the agitation and the effect of regular TV. Why can't it be so agitating, and the fact and fiction problem?
Yeah, sure. So regular TV is intended for people like, hopefully like you and me, Leah, people whose brains are still working, people who are able to track a plot, to tell fact from fiction, to process this rapidly moving audio and video to catch like a commercial interruption and get that that's an interruption in the show and that the show will return, right? But for a person who's living with dementia, they have lost those abilities. And so therefore, regular TV and something like YouTube, where you may have a lovely video of kitty cats, but then it's like a commercial, and that can be really, really disconcerting. And so these videos are specifically curated to be digestible by somebody who has lost those capacities. And I'm not sure if I really just answered your question.
Oh, I think so. And you gave an illustration elsewhere of someone who was seeing replay of 9/11 and the World Trade Center falling and thought it was a current thing that was happening outside there.
Yeah, that was my stepdad. And he went in and he woke my mother up and he said, Kathleen, terrible things are happening in New York. And if you talk to people who live with loved ones with dementia, this is a very, very common theme. Like they'll see something on the news of somebody like a robbery and they're like, we got to get out of here, you know? And so TV can be extremely upsetting and disorienting. And conversely, the right programming can be very, very soothing. So with ZinniaTV, just a couple of examples with the research that we've been doing at Vancouver General Hospital, they have a fellow there who is destructive. And so he demolished their televisions. And so they put in a projection system in the ceiling in one of the rooms. And when he's starting to get agitated, they walk with him and breathe with him while they're walking. And they walk him to that space where they put on the classic Cars video. And it turns out the guy's a car nut. And so when he walks into that room, the entire wall is filled with images of cars. And so he goes up and he is the expert in the room. And so he's talking about what we're seeing. And, if you do this with this, then you gotta, and it just totally brings him down. Or the babies video is a favorite. I just watched, I go to long-term care communities and I sit in memory care and I watch videos with them to just kind of keep getting feedback, right? What works, what doesn't work. And I was at one recently watching the babies video, and even the men just completely soften when that video comes on and they're talking to each other. But we also have heard from people who use that video, or if somebody's really crazy about bunnies, they would use the bunnies video, whatever it is, to help somebody come down when they're in a state of high agitation. And even people who have a PRN for an antipsychotic who have reported that Zinnia is a great alternative to the use of the antipsychotic, which for me personally, knowing how antipsychotics can damage the brain over time, like, yay.
Oh, good.
Alternative.
Yeah. Now, how do do the videos, clarify for the audience, do these show motion, or are they a series of still photos? And what is the difference in effect on the brain?
That's a good question.
Or is it a combination?
So the answer is that yes, we have both. And that even when we have a still image, there is a process that's used to either move in or move out or across the image, because that movement can be in and of itself can be somewhat soothing. And so our first videos were all still images, but then we started incorporating video, and we slow the video way down so that even if it's a baby, the baby's sort of, moving slowly. And we even within the player, people can optionally crank it down even more. So you can go to half speed or 0.75 speed. So, which can be helpful if you're going to have conversations about what you're seeing, because it really gives you time to watch something moving very slowly and talk about what we're watching.
Do you recommend that if you get the person with dementia involved in a conversation that you just pause the video or turn it off, or do you recommend that you leave it moving along?
Ideally, pausing it, I think, is good. But when you hit, it's a technical thing. When you hit the pause button, the little play button appears in the middle of the screen, to play it again. And so I find that disconcerting. So my preference is to just slow it way down and talk. But you can always, once the conversation is going, you can certainly hit pause and keep the conversation going and then play again when you're ready to talk about the next topic.
How does it compare to looking at a scrapbook or still photos with your loved one?
I think that both are useful. I think there's a place for both. I think that visual imagery is a great conversation starter. So I know that with my husband, I would bring magazines, I would bring different images or objects that we could talk about. And I think that those are wonderful. I think that's the thing, right? That as caregivers, it's really important to have like a bunch of tools, right? I wouldn't ever say to somebody, get Zinnia and all your problems are solved and you'll never, ever need anything else to help with the person with dementia. No, I think that having other kinds of engagement tools is necessary.
Mm. How about the sound? What are you playing music on ZinniaTV, or are there sound effects, or what do you do?
Yeah, so there's 3 different types of auditory output from Zinnia. And the first one is music. So, there are studies all over the place talking about the impact of music on anybody's brain, right? And so music can be incredibly soothing. Music can also be really irritating if it's not music that I like. So we always recommend to people that start with the Zinnia video as it is, but if you want to mute it and play your own music in the background, go for it if there's something that you think somebody will really like. We do use sound effects, and that was after talking with some practitioners who talked about how the sound effects really help amplify the connection with the thing that I'm seeing. So if there are birds and the birds are chirping, that's a wonderful thing. And I'm going to talk about simulated presence therapy in a second. But the thing I wanted to just discuss first was we got wonderful feedback from a woman who said, my husband has not uttered a sound in years. And we were watching the bird video and the birds were chirping and he started chirping. So I thought that was really sweet. So we do have some language that we use. Now, we know that when communicating with a person with dementia, that we want to use, and I'm talking about like a mid to late dementia. That being said, we've gotten great feedback from people with mild cognitive impairment who love videos, and caregivers who are like, I watch it. But anyway, so this idea of simulated presence therapy is that we're speaking, but we're being conscious of the fact that we need to use shorter sentences, that we need to really slow down, that we need to speak in a lower voice, because we know that many of our viewers are older, and therefore the higher range, high-pitched noises are harder to hear. And so keeping those things in mind, we offer invitations. So simulated presence therapy is exactly what it sounds like. That I talked about fact from fiction, right? People who are living with dementia are more likely to believe that what they're seeing is actually in the room with them. So you can also take advantage of that. And that is where we offer things like families. I always recommend this to families. They're like, he refuses to take his medication. Well, I know of research that has demonstrated that if you take a video of a family member on your phone and you send it to the caregivers, and the video simply is, hey, Mom, hey, Allyson, yeah, you got to take your pills. The doctor said you got to take your pills. And so it's as if I'm there and I'm a trusted source and I'm telling them to take their pills, they're more likely to take their pills. So anyway, riffing off of that, we have videos that invite people to do things. So we have our drinking water video, but we also have drinking water with friendly messages, which is where there are people who pop up on the screen and say, mom, or they don't say mom, sorry, because it may not be their mom, but they say,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm so thirsty. Will you have a drink of water with me? And we tested this. In fact, I love this, that we had that with friendly messages, and there's somebody with a glass of ice water, and they're saying, oh, this looks so refreshing. Will you drink water with me? And the place it wasn't working was at one of the test sites in Vancouver, which was a long-term care community that was for people where most of the residents spoke Cantonese. And
Oh,
so, what we did is we did a test film where we took out the person with the ice water and we put in this lovely older lady who was a Cantonese speaker, and she had a little cup of tea. And in Cantonese, she invited them to please drink tea with her. And so they showed this at the community, and everybody's like, oh, sipping their tea with her. So
wow.
but anyway, and so we're also testing longer formats of that, where we actually have me on the screen welcoming people and inviting them to sit down and talking about what we're going to watch. And then we roll a Zinnia video and my voice is coming through saying, what a cute dog. And did you ever have a dog? Who's your favorite dog? And so I've been testing those in long-term care, and it's fascinating watching the residents turning to each other and having conversations, answering the questions that I'm asking. So I think that there's more to come on that.
I love it. That's exciting. Do you ever analogize to children's TV programming or take cues from that?
This all started with me thinking, there's Sesame Street for kids. Why isn't there something for adults with whose cognition is not like normal adult cognition? And so we're really mindful about not being babyish. So, and I think that there are a lot of correlations between what would be appealing to a younger person, to a child, and what would be appealing to somebody whose cognition is diminished. I think that having a focus on a primary object is important. The soothing tones are important. So I think that there's definitely similarities, but like in one of the videos, we sing the song Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, but it's like, really? That's a baby song. But the way that it's presented is we're about to watch a baby's video together. And so I say, I was with a baby recently and I sang this song and I thought, man, I'm so glad I know this song because the baby loved it. And I think that we should practice it together. So the next time you see a baby, you're able to sing this song with them. And so in that context, we then sing the song together. And the people in the room are like, me, doing it along with me. So I think it's beautiful.
That's neat. You find an occasion to bring that in. That's legitimate for an adult. That's great. Are there colors that you've found are more beneficial, or sizes of objects or whatever? I read something about color in relation to Alzheimer's, not dementia specifically.
I think that we know that there are certain colors that are more that work better in certain settings than other colors. So one of the most important things is to not have multiple things that are the same color. So if I have a red tablecloth and I put on it a red plate and we're eating beets, right, it will be hard for the person with dementia to find the plate and to find the food. So contrasting colors is important. And so therefore, long-term care communities will often use plates that are not white, or plates that are a color that is less likely to be the colors of the food, so people can easily find the food on the plate. So I would say that that's probably the greatest importance with colors.
Are there any other studies that you'd like to share with my audience?
Yeah,
either about ZinniaTV or about the way that what you're learning about the brain.
Sure. I was actually just kind of reading a bunch of these because I want to do a paper that talks about like physically, why does ZinniaTV work? So there is a paper that was just published as a result of the research that was in Vancouver, and it's called The Perspective of Nurses and Healthcare Providers on the Use of Television Videos with People with Moderate to Severe Dementia. And so they talk about brain changes. I mean, what we know, right, is that the brain of a person who's living with dementia is going to be 30% potentially smaller at death than a person who didn't have dementia. And so how does that translate into the work that we're doing at Zinnia? Well, so a simplistic way to think about this is, so it's 30% smaller. So that means that there are gaps and openings, neurons are dying, and brain tissue is dying. And so anytime that your brain takes in, where our brains are like input and output machines, right? And processing machines, but you take input in like through your eyes or through your ears, and that information goes lots of different places to finally get to where it's recognized, where it's a vision, where it's what I'm seeing, or where it's what I'm hearing, or it's translated properly. And so, as you can imagine, if there's less and less brain tissue, then what's happening is that information comes into the eye, and say it goes really simplistically, but if it goes here to start the processing route, and then it's supposed to go here, but on its way between here and here, there's a bridge out, it has to reroute, and it's going to reroute. So it'll say, oh God, I better go this way. And so, that bridge is out too, I better go this way. And so it makes sense then that the result is that your processing speed slows down. And so this even translates to things like increased fall risk, right? If I'm walking along and I trip over something, by the time my brain processes that I just tripped over something, I'm going to be on the ground. I'm not going to, like, it's, right foot out, the message is going to come too late. And so I fall. And so that is, so therefore, right, when we make videos, we want to make videos that are respectful of the fact that it takes a lot longer for information to come in and a lot longer for responses to come out. But anyway, the paper that I was just talking about identified 5 things that videos can be used to calm the person who is in emotional distress, form connections with the person with dementia, bring people with dementia together, facilitate activities of daily living, and help the person connect with their past. Now, something else that you and I had talked about briefly in email was dementia, the connection between dementia, TV watching, and getting dementia. So I'd like to just chat about that a little bit, because
please.
I shared this with somebody and they were like, well, that's not very good for Zinnia. We're not advocating ever that somebody sits in front of a TV all day long. No. We're advocating the use of Zinnia as a tool to create all the things we already talked about. So anyway, so it turns out that so there was a study that was done in 2005 that indicated that TV is not great for cognition. And so 3 things are talked about. One is, well, if I'm sitting watching TV, I'm not exercising. If I'm sitting watching TV, I'm not engaging socially with people. And if I'm sitting watching TV, there is a lack of intellectual stimulation, depending on what I'm watching. And so those 3 things, exercise, social engagement, and intellectual stimulation, are all known factors that increase risk of dementia. So therefore, if I'm sitting watching TV for 4 or more hours a day, in fact, what they determined is that each hour of TV viewing increases by 1.3 times the risk that you're going to get dementia. But I want to take this a little further. That was a fairly small study. And so what they concluded basically is, lots of sedentary, like just sitting there, seems to translate. Okay. So then there was a study in 2018 called the UK Biobank study, where they tested 500,000 people. And I'm just referring to my notes because I want to make sure I get my numbers correct. 500,000 people. And what they discovered is they tested everybody at the baseline, and they discovered that the more TV watching that occurred in this person's life was linked with worse cognitive function. And that 5 years later, TV viewing was absolutely linked with further decline in cognitive function, and that type of sedentary action mattered. So, for instance, sitting at a TV seemed to make cognition worse, and sitting at a computer doing something interactive, not just streaming, seemed to make cognition better. So then that study was revisited in 2022. And what they discovered is that, in fact, there seemed to be a 24% increase in likelihood of dementia if somebody watches TV for 4 hours or more a day, and an actual 15% reduction in likelihood that someone's going to get dementia if their sedentary activity is that they are using a computer in an interactive way. So then the last thing to talk about is that there was a study that just came out in 2023 that riffed on that biobank study. And what they were looking at is, but why? What's actually happening? And what they saw is that that watching TV for long periods of time actually causes brain changes in the areas of the brain that are associated with language, communication, and memory that are consistent with the changes that are found that are caused that are part of dementia. And so the takeaway is that, isolation is bad. So sitting all day and watching TV is bad for several reasons, right? But in addition, it actually changes your brain in a way that makes it 24% more likely that you're going to get dementia. So, right. So
that's a sobering
even in a
set of statistics. Well, thank you for sharing this, Allyson Schrier. You have been a delight to talk to. And if any of you did not hear our first episode together, please go back and find that one. And Allyson, again, people can reach you at ZinniaTV.com.
Yeah, Zinnia like the flower, ZinniaTV.com is our website. And info@ZinniaTV.com is a great way to reach me if you have specific questions or want to have a conversation about any of this stuff. I would welcome that.
Well, what a delight. You've given us some real hope and some helpful hints to tap into, and I hope many people check out Zinnia TV. Thank you, Allyson.
Yeah, wow. I loved being here with you. You're easy to talk to.
Well, thank you. So are you. All right. We'll send you on your way.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Subscribe and review Conversation Balloons on your favorite podcast platform. Find me at leahfarish.com and on Instagram at LeahFarish.